Welcome to another one of our videos, and today we're looking at the squat. And I had a question during the week: what things do you look for during a squat, and what do you do to correct them? So it's a hard question because there's a lot of things that can go wrong, and it's hard to give you a definitive answer that there's only one thing to do, or I always do this, because it just depends on the person. All right, so we're going to go through a couple of scenarios. So Nathan's going to demonstrate a couple of nice squats, just so you get an idea of what a good squat is. So to be able to correct anything, you have to know what the good squat really looks like. So you can see here, Nathan's actually really good. Probably, if anything, he's more of a almost a front squat here. But the angles we look for are the shin and the spine really need to be very parallel to each other. And Nathan's going to show you in a second what it looks like, or some of the squats we commonly see that do not look like that. So there's a lot of things happening here. Ankles need to have good flexibility, hip needs to have good flexibility, thoracic needs to have good flexibility, and you need to have good motor control and coordination, because sometimes it's not mobility at all, it's just coordination that's really letting you down. All right, so that's a good squat. And Nathan, just give us another quick one so you've got it in your head what it looks like when he's moving. And then we'll have a look at a couple of scenarios where it's ordinary. So Nathan's sort of shown here what it might look like if we see someone with, say, a lack of ankle flexibility, and they're basically, so you can see here, they haven't moved here because they just don't have the control to get to there. The only way they could get there is to come on their tippy toes, which would make them really weak and just give them knee problems. So they've learnt to really, this is really a deadlift, to be honest, so not a squat at all. All right, so what do we do for that though? So because it's not quite as easy as saying use your ankles more, because there might be a reason they can't. There might have been a sprained ankle, could be like weak feet as well. So they're all options that you have to explore. So things that we might need to correct it, different drills for different body parts. So Dylan's about to show us here an example of an ankle drill we might use, and we'll use a step here. We've sort of found it's easier if we can have their foot a bit closer to their body, and they can use their hands to guide their knee in the action of the squat that they want. So the band around the ankle really helps to pull a certain joint around the foot back into place, which unlocks the ankle. So now, as opposed to a stretch, you'll notice Dylan's not trying to hold this. He's actually trying to move it through the range exactly the way he would want to do it when we're squatting. So the brain can sort of see how the timing and the sequence of that specific movement that he's looking for is used. All right. So if we've identified it's mainly an ankle problem, it could be other things as well, but that's one thing that we want to eliminate. We might use that drill between sets. Now, Nathan's removing his shoes here because we might suspect, well, if there's an ankle thing, then maybe there's also a foot problem. So we might need to cheat around it at first, and we might need to add some extra tools. So what we've asked him to do is go barefoot, and then we're going to look at what his toes do. How does he grip the floor with his toes? Can he move his big toe? We're sort of having a look, and we're asking him, can you spread your toes here? So spreading the toes is important, right? Because when toes grip together, it creates a rigid foot. And people grip when they have a lack of stability, and it's usually poor footwear and just weak feet in general, and not being aware. So one of the first things to try and do if you are a tight ankle person is to remove your shoes. Try and spread your toes and work on being able to move that big toe up and down, and then trying to create that better stability through the foot there. Now you'll notice that we'll come through here and we'll cheat on Nathan's ankles for a bit to use some heel plates. We'll use the heel plates to help his other joints learn what the correct angles are, so the knee, the hip, and the spine, to actually experience a real squat for a change, because the ankle's never able to do it. So you can see here we're giving him the extra ankle flexibility from the heel plates. By having him barefoot, we can actually help his feet to engage better, and by using a lot of repetitions, there's a chance that we can really begin to make some progress in changing this squat. You can sort of see Nathan's trying to show what it might look like, where it's not perfect yet, but it's better than it was before. So the angle here is still not quite the same, but it's getting better than it was, where it was more like that and like that. earlier. All right, so you can get to see how the heel plate can make a huge difference. It definitely is cheating, but it's not. It's a necessary part for the other joints to understand how to do it better. Now Mel's placed down a mat called a sensor mat here that has a lot of foam spikes on it, and this really helps engage more of the nerves underneath the feet that provide you with the stability. So you can see here, without the heel plates, it's not as easy for him, but we're actually helping the foot to engage its stability better so it doesn't lock the ankle up. So going between heel plates, ankle mobility drill, and using sensor mat and various foot drills, there's a good chance we can start to get back some of this range within the squat and learning the pattern better so that eventually it can start to look a bit more like what it is there. And that's what it was when he was on the floor. So where we've got those beautiful angles, see that? And that's what we're looking for. But it might take a period of quite a fair amount of time. It's not a quick process, not a quick fix by any means. All right, but that might be one, several strategies we may use to help overcome that ankle restriction that really ruining the squat. So the next one we might look at is, which is another common one, and Nathan's going to demonstrate it again. Like he's really doing a good job showing poor form, but this is where we see the hips are a problem, and the person overusing their ankles and knees, not getting enough out of the hips. So it's almost the exact opposite of the last one. And you'll see here. So if he comes up, you'll do another one, and it's really obvious that it just doesn't even look like a good squat. But see how his ankles and knees go forward, but really loses, and he goes into this horrible tilt here. And usually what we'll see on this person is the first movement's all just being done by the knees. They're almost staying straight, and their hips can't actually go backward to keep that lumbar curve. That's just so important, especially if you're going to put a barbell on a person like this. But there's also a lot of potential for hip impingement here, and they're going to be very much hanging on the quads. They're really using the quads for everything and getting nothing out of the back of the back of the legs here. Just a horrible position for a squat. All right, so the hip is going to be the huge problem here. All right, so we need to, and there's a good example of how we went all knees. Can you sort of see that there? If I just take that back for you, so you can see it, very first movement is, if I just go back, just all knees as he's coming down. All right, yeah, see that, all knees. It's a horrible position. All right, so what do we do? Well, there's a lot of things. Again, there's not just one. There's many. So Dylan here is going to show us that he might want to mobilise the thoracic region first before he gets the hips. So he's going to look at the thoracic because that's going to be very rigid in that awful position it was in. He's going to look at mobilising his glutes as well, knowing that there's going to be a huge amount of trigger points because that's what's really pulling that pelvis in, or posterior tilt. So he's going to have to break that up. And that, again, that's not going to be a quick fix. It's going to take quite some time. And obviously learning pelvic positioning, on the floor, in which Dylan's going to show here. He might do some various drills to try and help that person learn that. So he's going to set up as if he's in a squat position and coming down, going down into the bottom range of the squat, with the instruction to be, do not lose the curve in the spine here. So that person is really trying to keep that pelvis stuck in an anterior tilt. All right, so he's staying in an anterior tilt as he's lowering into the squat, where normally the person would want to hunch, and we're giving them instructions, keep this and then just send your hips backward. So that's really important, because if that's the head of the femur there, it's sort of got to sit deep into the socket, where normally that person's sort of sending it forward, and that's where the hip impingements and stuff like that would generate from. So a simple drill that we would use, and that also helps to determine your squat, the width of your legs, and also what range you can get to without losing your curve. An additional thoracic drill, so we've used the foam roller for the thoracic region and also the glutes. Now we're using like a rotational drill to help free up that thoracic region, give it more freedom, so then he might be able to hold a better position up above, so that it doesn't influence poor position at the pelvic region. So we might do 3 or 5 reps on each side, and then we'll try and get like a better squat again. So then, and then actually one more. Nathan's going to use, this is another awesome hip hip mobility sort of work, where we've got a band pulling that head of that femur deep into the socket, and then trying to move that front leg into a bit more of an external rotation. So see Nathan move his leg here, really try, and that's demanding a huge amount of release at the back of that leg there, which will give him the ability to maintain a better anterior tilt when he's in the bottom of that squat. And you'll see Nathan moving his glutes out to his body out to the side, really trying to move that hip into all different range of movement so that we can get better mobility when he's trying to move. And then he'll even move it into an internally rotated position, being very careful of this one, and then trying to sort of free that hip up so that when he goes to squat, he's got more range to do so, and we don't see the restriction that we saw on the last go. All right, so there's some great drills there that we would use for all types of hip problems. All right, and then we would say, okay, show us the squat again. And and the person might sort of still struggle, and you'll often see this head thing where the reason they're doing that is they're trying to look up to get extension, because normally they don't have extension. They're usually stuck in flexion. So sometimes we might let that go on for a bit, but then over time we'd need the trainer to come in there and try and correct that and give them the cue. So we're sort of saying to, yes, and you see Dylan here will correct that head position and show him where he needs to be getting it from, see? So he's trying to help him get the feeling of not using his neck all the time and using his pelvis to go anterior tilt to give him the extension that he's lost. All right, so sometimes this is where it can be a coordination reason and not really the joints themselves at all. And then someone guiding the hips into the position that they need to be, and then he's got that nice position that he needs, and then he just needs a lot of reps to learn how to do it and maintaining that neutral neck position all the time. All right, so there's sort of several examples. So the first squat we saw was all about the ankles. Second one was the person was too much knees and ankles and not enough hip. And then this sort of last one is where it could be just coordination that's the reason. All right, and in some cases it could be all of the above. All right, so the key is just know what the good squat should look like, and then use all your various tools and tricks and that to find ways to get your squat looking like that. And if you do that, happy days. All right, so I hope you've enjoyed that video, and we'll see you on our next one.